We should start the session. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and thank you especially to Gill, who is running this session today from Little Man Project. Gill is a long-time partner and friend of the CLC and creates bespoke e-learning content specifically for charities. She's going to be sharing her sort of case study today on what they've learned while trying to create an inclusive design.
Thank you,
Gill.
thank you. So yes, thank you all for coming, and it's good to see how many people have chosen inclusive design over supporting their teams remotely. I feel good about that. Obviously, you've all learned how to make them happy, so now you just need to make sure that we're making inclusion. As Annabelle said, I'm going to be talking about the kind of journey that me and my team, and big shout to them because a lot of what I've learned from them. So the journey that we've been going on to produce more inclusive e-learning, and with a focus on a very kind of a rounded experience. And so from my perspective, it's great because this kind of really does follow on from the things that Martin was saying in his first session, in terms of that kind of lived experience. So, some of you know me, some of you may not, and so I've decided this time around that I won't go into lots and lots of detail about who we are. As Annabelle said, that I run Little Man Project. We do a lot of work with members, and we specialise in only creating e-learning for the charity sector. And following on from this morning's session, we do that because it makes us happy, and it is definitely 100% part of our recruitment activity to make sure that people come to us because they want to be happy and to make e-learning for charities as well. It's a really special thing to be able to be part of something where other people are doing important things and you just do what you love that helps them to do what they need to do. So, thank you for allowing us to do that. So a few facts about me. Yes, I run Little Man Project. I have been doing it for way too many years now. I've included this time around that I'm dyslexic. Some of you might not know that already who have worked with me for a while. I personally consider that to be one of my superpowers. I think it contributes to what I do every day, and I think it's a really important part of me. I think that the thing that in the context of what I'm talking about today is not so much that I think of it as a disability. I think the thing that it does is it helps me to understand why people get frustrated by that one solution for all. We made it accessible, we've done this, we've done that. And I think, from my perspective, the classic solutions for that are kind of applied for dyslexic people, they don't work for me, and that's okay. I don't mind that, and I don't have a problem that people apply them and they work for others. But what it has shown me is that you can't just have one sort of solution for all and consider that you've ticked your box. And so that's kind of a really important part. And then the last thing is I love a charity shop. So if any of you got any suggestions or recommendations of any of your charities who run really great charity shops, I don't mind travelling. So, chuck them in. The last thing I want to say before I get into kind of the hub of what I'm going to talk about is that Jen Compton, she's waving, she works with me at Little Man Project. Some have described her as my work wife. She is 100% the kind of yin to my yang. She's going to be lurking about in the chat for me and answering any questions that you might have, and she'll also post any links to things that I inadvertently mention. So yeah, if you see Jen replying to things, that's because she knows as much as I do. So Little Man Project has actually been in existence now for 10 years. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary in lockdown. like every anniversary that everybody's experienced this year. So that has meant that we have produced lots and lots of e-learning, hours and hours, and it gives us, kind of a perspective that we can then offer to you, because that's what we do day in, day out. However, the one thing I want to make it really clear is that I am not a expert in inclusive design. This is the journey that we have been going through. We've got the passion, we've got the interest, we want to do the right thing, and this is the journey that we've taken to try and improve what we're doing. So I am not here as a expert in this topic. It is about us wanting to do better, and it's a commitment that we've made within the organisation. Every year we commit to one activity that we want to really focus of improvement, and so we've done graphics, we've done be more creative, we've done better user interface design, and this time around this year's focus was very much on being more inclusive and ensuring accessibility. So I would like you in the chat, which for me is over here, to suggest what you consider to be inclusive design. So give me a definition. What do you think of it as? And then I can kind of go on and say what I think. Yeah. Okay. So there's some things around learning styles and access, a range of kind of techniques. Yeah, I like that one, Sharon, the idea of everyone having a voice and an input. Okay, thank you. Some will match what I've said and some won't, so it's good to get those out, and then we can kind of explore our thinking. So in terms of what we consider to be the kind of inclusive design, I've kind of put on the screen three kind of terms that you might have heard. So for us, accessibility is a very distinctively different thing to inclusive design, although they overlap. And I will talk about what I mean by that and where that becomes important. So another term that you can use is universal design. But the thing for me about the term inclusive is that it draws upon different aspects to make sure that you're supporting people. So it's not just about diversity and access, it's also about kind of lived experience and different people's way of thinking and people's different kind of social and economic situations. So it's really kind of encompassing. So I think this is my point. There's two elements to it. So there's this physical access, which is where we talk about accessibility. So making sure that people can use the e-learning that you create. That's that physical side. But there's also this element of allowing and ensuring people can connect with what you've produced, which is, the kind of, the balance of what you're trying to do. So there's physical use, which is the accessibility element, and then there's allowing, ensuring people that can, connect with what you've created. So I love this analogy. This is, I found this when I was researching, and I think it's a really powerful way to understand, and it helped to solidify some of the discussions that we were having internally about what our responsibility was. So it's the concept that Your job when designing is to reflect a learner's own reality, so that when they look at your module, they can see themselves in that module. And you can imagine that that's really encompassing, that that's where they live, what they do. And so that's really important. But where it's maybe not so understood, go back. Oh, come on, back. There we go. Oh, no, we're going forward. There we go. Where it's not so understand is this concept that you also have a responsibility to show people other people's reality. And so you have to be thinking about, and I think that the showing other people's reality is also kind of partly about future proofing as well. But I mean, I do think it's really important. So reflect what they see themselves in your module, that it feels relevant to them, and respectful, but also show the reality of others, so that you're opening them up to other people's reality, and you're acting as a kind of a showcase to that, which will also ensure that you're future proofing. So a good example of that is you might consider that your target audience for a piece of e-learning is a particular demographic. And so if you were to focus only on reflecting them when they see, the characters that they see in your module, what you would get is a maybe not an inclusive solution. So for instance, if your audience is mostly white male, early 20s, maybe in a fundraising or a volunteering kind of situation, then if you only reflect them, you'll only show those types of people. Whereas if you're concluding this idea of the window, the showing the reality of others, then that reminds you that you must also be including a range of different characters, and then that's an important responsibility that you have. So I'm going to kind of include some of the quotes throughout of things that I think are personally a really important thing that people are considering. So this comes back to the kind of motivation and why it's so important, but also, it does remind us in terms of a kind of inclusive design. So I would consider that probably everybody who is in this session right now is a designer. You might be designing programs, processes, documents, probably quite a few of you e-learning or training. So that makes you a designer. And so I think, we must take responsibility for what we're doing and consider our role in how that is then affecting others. So we must be always striving to be the best and make sure that we understand the impact that we have when we produce something. So if it doesn't work for somebody, or it insults somebody, or they can't access it, all of these things are, you're having an impact on that person's world. And so I take my responsibilities as a designer really, really importantly, and that's been a big shift for me, and it has changed very much the way that we work with people. So just kind of following on from that, and going back to the kind of inclusive design, I want to just kind of talk you through the journey that we've gone through, and then get to some really practical things that we've learned that I hope we can share with you. So the kind of first thing is that we have this ethos. We reviewed our vision and mission. I mean, COVID makes everything seem like a million years ago, but maybe it's like 2 years ago. And we came up with this vision statement, which is that we wanted to deliver the best learning experience as possible that creates change, because we work in the charity sector and we believe what we're producing for you doesn't just give people information and knowledge, but it is actually helping you as a organisation to meet your mission and create change in the world, which you're all trying to do. And that was really important. We didn't put a caveat that then said, but you must have 20/20 vision, not be colourblind, and this is for everybody. And so having that mission statement was really important for us. Now, internally, this kind of equates to this, so you must excuse me if you're offended by language. But what this, for us, has become our mantra, that nothing bad leaves our shop. No shit leaves our shop. We do not produce anything. It sounds flippant, but it's a mantra that we can live by. So when we're struggling, when we can't find the right design for something, we do not cut corners, because our mission statement is our mantra that we use is that we do not let something go if it's not right and good. And that's a powerful thing to remember, and we remind each other. Someone might say, well, the client has just said it's fine, and no, we have to take responsibility for pushing back and saying it's not fine. That is not as part of our way of working. The next thing I wanted to say is, around who we work with and the power of what they can offer us. So we work with a huge range of charities, and all with doing kind of different things, and they have taught us so much. They've taught us about the edges of society, or the different lived experiences of different people, which has as a designer really kind of enriched what we're doing. But what they've also done is taught us what it's like to experience our e-learning. If you are in different, if you have different kind of cognitive issues, or and so the slide that I'm showing you, this in the middle, this was something we created with the National Autistic Society, and the feedback we got from their reviewers, who are often all on the autism spectrum, has been really powerful for us to understand the things we were doing that caused people problems. And so that's one example. We have learnt from lots of others who I will be sharing with you. Those of you who are developing e-learning and who kind of work more in the kind of tools and the kind of technical side, you will know, if you are working with any Articulate products, that Articulate Storyline, which is kind of one of the most common tools used by UK charities, in my experience, they have been putting a lot of work into their accessibility solutions. So this is about physical access at this point. So Jamie and I, Jamie's one of our developers, we went to see Articulate 2 years ago, the last time you were allowed to go to Learning Technologies, and we said to them, what's your roadmap? What's your roadmap for, what are you doing? What are you going to give us? And they said to us, our 100% focus in terms of developing our product is to make sure that we're offering better access solutions, so accessibility. So they have made massive improvements to both Storyline and Rise. And so that has enabled us to couple together our desire and our wishes with practical things that we can do. So if you are using Storyline and you want to kind of hear more about that, I will talk a little bit about it, but it's not going to be for everybody, so that might be something we have to kind of look at separately. We've also seen a really increased demand from our customers. So we've had a lot more clients who have come to us and said that we want to make improvements in this area. So again, that's brilliant because it kind of couples with our desire to do things. But it has also been, and Jen will laugh when I say this, it's been an absolute crash course in getting this right, because we're doing that many that we've learned and applied our learning and learnt more and applied our learning and learnt more. And so that's why, I'm so pleased that I can kind of share some of those things with you. So I would say that, certainly we did a project for the National Autistic Society where we updated 12 of their modules, and, in a kind of 6-month period. So Jen and the screen reader voice have become very familiar with each other, and yeah, she gets quite upset when you use the tone he uses on her. So that's kind of been a big driver for us. And now, one thing that's been a real personal thing for me, and I will quote him and I will bore you to death if you will let me talk about it, but I would hugely recommend this book to anyone who's doing any form of design. Mike Monteiro is a web designer, focusing very much on kind of accessible solutions, but he has a very strong opinions about responsibility of designers and the damage that we are doing culturally and to individuals. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I would really recommend, if I ever get Charity Learning Consortium to let me speak on it, I will give you the condensed version of Mike's vision. But it's very much about us having a personal responsibility to make sure that what we produce is inclusive and accessible. So before I go on to kind of our, things that I think you should be doing, I think what I want to be clear is that inclusive design is better for everybody. And we've seen this over the years, in terms of the development of things. If you kind of think back to the doorknob, we had the doorknob, and it was no good if you had things in your hand, and it was no good if you had issues with dexterity or access. Then we went to the handle, which was kind of better, but it was still, it still required things. And then we ended up with the automatic door. So you can see the evolution of how things have been improved for particular individuals, but have had a wider impact. I think in a more modern day example would be the use of closed captions on social media, which was done specifically for a particular audience, but actually has now been encompassed and used. The majority of social media now have found that they must put subtitles in if they want engagement. So you can kind of see those sorts of things coming through, where it makes it better for everybody if we make inclusive design. So what I am going to suggest that you think about. How am I doing for time? Okay. So I have grouped these down into particular areas. So I think that we need to worry about the words that we're using, the types of media that we're using and how, the stories that we're telling, who's in our stories, clearly accessibility in terms of the logistics of using what we've got, and then the visuals. Are you laughing at my graphics, Laura? Do you recognise any of your characters? So the words. So the words relate very much to the text that you're putting on slides, and that's both in terms of communicating with others and the things that you're actually saying. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one because I guess you all know this, but this is my point that I couldn't miss out on, and that's: don't include anything offensive, rude, degrading, racist, sexist, all the obvious things. That, and that's important, obviously. But I think it's the next level down that I want to go into. I want to now think about the kind of nuances of your language, so not to do any harm. So you're looking at my slide here, and I would love in the chat if anyone could suggest what they think might not be very inclusive about this particular slide. Now, don't think about accessibility, think about inclusive. Why is this not inclusive? What's wrong with it? There are no prizes, and normally I will have a prize if we're all together. Anyone else? Okay, so, oh, excuse me. Thank you, Henry. You win the prize. So, yes, everybody, what you've produced, there was a transcript once you got to the video, which was underneath. What else did we have? The use of strong red, that is an accessible combination, so we knew that was okay. And from our research, red is considered to be pretty much internationally considered to be an active colour. So we were kind of comfortable on that side. The big issue that we've got here is that actually the terms we've used don't make any sense. The concept of click close to play something, the connection of those two things is illogical. We didn't spot it, the client didn't spot it. It's really when you start to kind of understand the different ways in which people perceive what you've written that you start to understand. And I think as a developer, my top tip for you would be you can get lost in what you've designed and think about it from your perspective. We considered this to be fine because you were closing a pop-up to then get a video to play. So logistically, it was great. The video didn't autoplay, which is very bad accessible issue. It had subtitles. It could be accessed by a screen reader. So we were ticking off lots of boxes. But what it didn't do was make sense to somebody who had a more literal way of thinking. And it's very easy as a developer to just slip into describing what the design is, when in fact actually somebody might not have even considered this to be a pop-up. We think of it as a pop-up, but they would not. So that's some of the things that we've had to kind of really think about and think through when we're building and testing what we've produced, to make sure that we are not using terminology that is comfortable with us but would feel illogical to somebody else. Another thing that it's kind of important to think about is the terms that you're using. So in this one, which I did fake up for the purposes of this, we haven't done this, but here you'll see the expression a quick quiz. And it's a very dangerous situation to be presuming the experience of others, because what might be quick to you might not be quick to them. So it's things like short, quick, easy, any terms like that. It's going to be quite damaging to the experience of somebody who isn't finding it quick and easy. And I think it's one of those inclusive things that we think we're helping with. We think, oh, well, it will make it seem like it's not so scary, or it will help someone to understand that it's not going to be very long. But actually what we're doing is presupposing the experience that they're having. And I have asked permission from the Cats Protection team, who did couch that I had to say that they were my favourite clients. So I've said it now, ladies. But they also taught us the dangers of talking about how long a module will take. Now, again, it's something that you do at the beginning of a module because you believe you're being supportive. You're allowing someone to decide how long they're going to allocate to completing that e-learning. And I'm not disagreeing, that's really important. But what they taught us while we were working with them is that you need to make that quite a wide length of time. So you don't say it's going to be a 30-minute module. You would say the module will take you around or between, and then you give them points. So you're still allowing them to plan their time, but you're not putting the pressure on them. For some learners who will try to kind of compete or meet that expectation, you're not presupposing how long that will take them. The other thing in terms of words is it's about using inclusive language. So I include this example because what we try to do now is we try to include a range of characters that include, thinking back to this kind of the mirror and the window, we try to make sure that we're including people with, who are kind of will suggest, will require themselves to be known as non-binary, or refer not to include gender allocation. So that's something that we've been doing a lot more of in the last kind of 2 to 3 years now. So it's not it goes back to this idea that you might say, well, that's not relevant to my learners, but that's only think of it through the mirror. If you think a bit through the window, then it does become important. Now, here's another one about presupposing people's understanding of things. I really like kind of sayings and things that I feel like will resonate with people, but it becomes quite dangerous if people don't understand. My husband probably won't thank me for using this example, but he's wasn't born in this country. He came here when he was 12, and even though he's been here for 35 years, he still cannot get his head around English sayings. So for him, these terms will just not land well for him. But it will also be a problem for people on the autism spectrum who, people who find things very literal will really have a problem with these. So you think you're doing a nice thing by kind of softening things and helping people to connect with things, but it's kind of really important to understand that you might actually being quite detrimental to people who don't understand the terms, who have English as a second language, who will then kind of read this and you may perhaps not understand the saying. So that becomes then a problem for them. So the next thing I want to talk about is visuals. Now, you might look at this slide and say, I don't know why I'm pointing over here, but this slide, and say, okay, I can read that. It looks fine to me. There's a good contrast. But actually, and I'm going to hold up. I know that this doesn't work because it's actually one of our brand colours, and that's embarrassing. We need to change it. And we know it doesn't work because when we put it through a contrast checker, even though to me it seems fine, quite often you can do a contrast, you can see a contrast and think, actually, I don't think that's going to work, or the font's going to be too small. But sometimes it looks absolutely fine. But if you put it through the contrast checker, you will see that it fails across the board. Not even in title text will it pass. So you need to make sure that you're always using the contrast checker. I think, Jen, if you can pop the URL for that in the chat, that would be very helpful so that people have got a copy, a link to this checker. It's completely free. Now, I would also say, I've been open and honest. This is our brand colour. We regularly check clients' brand colours, and they also don't meet this requirement. So 100% don't just consider a brand colour to a colour to be on brand and consider it to then be okay, because it may not. You need to make sure that you're testing it both on the colour that you're putting, the contrast between the colours, but also making sure that you're ticking off in terms of size. So that's a kind of a really important aspect. I would say, one of the things that we do at the beginning of a project is we will identify acceptable colours. So we will say that this brand colour is okay if it's got black text in, this one's okay, and then sometimes in all honesty we can't use some of the colours in anything where text is involved in any shape or form, because it doesn't matter if it's black or white, the contrast is not good enough. So if you have that, it will narrow down your options and avoid you making mistakes. So you will know what's okay. You'll have done your check. You'll know what's okay and what isn't okay. So in terms of making sure that you're representing a wide range of people, I'm going to go back to this kind of the mirror and window. I think that the common thing we think about is ethnicity, but I think it's really important to also thinking about more subtle elements of disability. And I think, that was one of the things that we learned from the work that we did with the National Deaf Children's Society, is understanding that not all hearing aids look the same. I know that sounds obvious, but there's a real choice in this, and so there's subtleties around showing and normalizing support facilities that people might be using around their disability. So it doesn't have to be that obvious. You can include subtleties. The other thing that I have a personal kind of a mantra on as well that I think is really important, and maybe you can see because I put on a lot of weight, but I don't like the concept of continually having kind of one size characters, which is again something that you can fall into. So I think it's really important that you have characters who come from different social backgrounds, who dress differently, who different sizes, the kind of a range of making sure that you're being inclusive around what you do. I mean, I remember the first time we got a client to allow us to put a tattoo on a character. That was a successful day. And now we just slip them in and we don't even ask permission. So, the last one was about being representative. I said my next point really is about making sure that you're being mindful of that representation. So making sure that you aren't falling into stereotypes, that you are using, you're connecting correctly people's names with their ethnicities, which sometimes, will need a bit of research to make sure you get it right. It might be around making sure that when you're using a character that you're not being disrespectful about their culture by the things that character might be doing, i.e. things that they wouldn't do because of religious reasons. So we're talking about nuances here where you're going to have to really start to understand quite a kind of a deep level of people's experiences and requirements. Now, when I was designing this slide show, I was putting it together with Jamie, who I work with, who's one of our designers, and I was trying to get him to understand, we were kind of talking things through and, what I was going to say, and I think that this kind of summarizes a really good point. This is actually Jamie drawing a house, because I love the analogy of, what we all consider to be a house, a normal house. And I think it kind of reflects this concept that we think of life as we live. So not everybody lives in a house. And I've seen studies done where I've actually been in a huge lecture theatre where the speaker got us all to draw a house on a piece of paper, and 90% of the room drew this house. And what that says is that we apply our own way of thinking. Sometimes it's been something that's been applied to us. So this is how children are taught to draw houses in school, and then we apply it going forward. And so what I want you to do is to make sure that you're not always just applying your mental understanding of the world, your model of the world, to everything that you produce, because then you'll only produce content that reflects your world. It won't be a mirror to other people's. So this was one of the tips that Jen suggested to me, which I love, is this idea that sometimes when it comes to your graphics, less is more. And if you look at this picture here, a learner can apply a whole range of different situations to this graphic. They might think that that's in a mansion. It could be in a care home, could be a flat, a house, a library. You're not presupposing their experience by putting, a particular kind of quintessential your considered living room. You're just offering them a nuance into it so that they can see the context, but you're not giving them too much detail that would then perhaps alienate people who live differently to you. So my next thing is about stories. Now, it's good learning design to include authentic stories, but don't just use the same sort of stories. Make sure that you're including different people's experiences, and making sure that when you include your stories, that you're being sensitive and sympathetic to their lived experience. So yes, it's about making sure that if you're doing 4 scenarios, that you've got a range of different people and their different experiences are coming through in those stories. And I've used this image before. It is about diversity. So what are you going to call your characters? Are you going to have characters that come from different settings? Are you going to include somebody with a disability? And if you are you going to make sure that you're being sensitive in the way that you're you're describing their life, because their life might not be the way that you expect because you don't live it. So make sure that you are giving a broad range of different people's experiences, but on the other hand, you need to be careful that you're making sure you're researching that well to make sure that you're not presupposing something that you don't understand. So I'm very conscious of running out of time. I thought I would have too little to say. So we're going to get into accessibility, which lots of people mentioned when I asked you for a definition, and I think I could do an entire 40 minutes on accessibility alone. I think my kind of top tips would be that when it comes to accessibility, I think regularly people fall into the trap of thinking it's certain disabilities. So we might make sure, I will regularly be asked, will there be subtitles on a video, because we must have that for accessibility reasons. I have checked my box. What's important is that you understand that there's more than just it's more than more issues than just sound and vision, that you've got motor skills, cognitive issues that you will be needing to address, and they will all have unique elements to them, and what you design may have problems when those things overlap, and you will need to think those through. So you shouldn't design a solution for one kind of group and then find that it then causes a problem for others, because you're therefore not being accessible and inclusive anymore. So for those of you that are building in Storyline, like I said, my kind of top tips for you in there are here. It's about making sure that all your images have alt text assigned, that only what's needed to be read by the screen reader is included, but don't use that as an excuse to not fix things. Don't just remove everything because it makes it easier and we'll just put the text in, because that's not giving a good experience. I all of these things, if you're designing and you want to know more about these things, I think it's probably easier if you kind of get in touch with me and I can talk you through some of these in more detail. I think the other thing is that we are planning a series of articles about this on our website. So if you are interested in more detail, then Jen will share the details of signing up for our newsletter, because one of those things that we're covering in our month of inclusive design is going to be very much more detail on the how-to in Storyline. What I wanted to do though is to show you the experience, and I'm really hoping that you'll be able to hear the sound when in fact, if there we go. I'm just going to share this now. So this is actually a screen reader reading a screen, and what I think is really important is that you experience it as well. So if you haven't already, we use a screen reader called NVDA. It's open source, and according to some statistics I've seen, I think it's about 78% usage. So it's quite a high usage of that solution. Yes, I think it's, well, obviously you should be using it whenever you're doing any QA, but I think as a developer, it's really important that you immerse yourself in understanding that experience. So I'm going to play you. Can you hear that sound?
Folder view list. Google. 8. Blank. Out of frame link skip to main content. Main landmark frame clickable communication preferences for people on the autism spectrum. Click on the silhouettes to review some of these preferences. Button Christoph. If I can, I prefer to communicate with people through email. Button Anon. Depends on the context, who, where, what about. Button Omar. As little as possible in any medium. Button Alex. Face-to-face, tactile and with normal.
So, what you will have heard there is the screen reader going through an order of elements on a screen that we have put in. So we've had to program that. So it could happen automatically, but it would happen in a random order. So there's a lot of work to make sure that in terms of the experience that you're giving, that it will go through in the order. And so that includes giving the instruction first, obviously, and then making sure that you've got good alt text so that they understand. So the term button will then, kind of make it clear that there's a clickable action. And then it will, run through in the order, in a logical order that you're going through. So it's things like that you will find that a really useful exercise to really genuinely understand that experience that people are having. So my last one is media. Obviously I'm going to suggest that you should be making sure that you've got closed captions or subtitles. You probably need to decide whether or not you're going to use audio descriptions in there as well. Now, where I think it gets a little bit more controversial is my view on audio. Now, audio is very commonly, we'll very often get asked by a client, can we include audio to make it accessible? And I use this analogy of the elephant in the room because I personally think that adding audio to a module is probably the least accessible thing you can do, to the point in which you make it not accessible. And I'm happy to have conversations about that because I know it's very controversial. But I think you really need to understand the overlap that it will have with a screen reader, to lots of audio. We've got cognitive issues around cognitive overload when audio and text appears on the screen at the same time. You've got issues where it's difficult to make amendments because you need to have a specific voice still in. So there's lots of issues around audio that I think are quite problematic. So what I would say is, if you do have audio, make sure 100% that you do not have autoplay. You must allow the learner to make that decision to play their audio. You must make sure that you're thinking about people using a screen reader and whether or not there's going to be an overlap with the screen reader and the audio, and whether or not you'll need a transcript, which I think people mentioned in terms of things that would be useful. I think one solution that I would pitch to you that we think we've used quite successfully is a concept of audio on demand, which I don't have time to show you, but I will put a link. Jen, can you put a link to the NoFast project on their website? And that's a solution where we have included audio, but the learner chooses to play it. So they have the text, but if they choose not to read it or they can't read it, then they can press on that text and it will be read for them. So you're empowering people and giving them choice, but you're also allowing people not to be driven by the audio and the pace in which the audio would go. So those are the things I want to take away with. I want you to remember to be thinking about the terms that you're using, how you're giving instructions, the words that you use, in terms of being inclusive. I want you to think about the media, the types of media that you've got, the stories that you're telling, whether or not you're being accessible, and the visuals that you're showing people. So I would have loved to include more discussion, but I think, are you here to tell me to stop talking, Annabella?
Unfortunately, yeah, we have.
I've got one last thing to
run out
say
of
before
time.
we go. I would love to work with CLC, and I've spoken to Martin about this, about working with you guys to get your tips for this, both from your experiences, because I know we have got seasons developers in the room, but also from your knowledge of your user groups. As charities, you'll have a great insight into the needs of particular types of users. And I think we could all benefit from that being shared to us and shared around. So we're happy to coordinate that work. So I'm going to work with Martin to work out how we can use your comms channels to try and encourage that to happen.
That sounds amazing. It would be great to crowdsource that resource directly from members. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Gill, for joining us today.
Over.
No, it's absolutely fine. You had so much to say and it was all really useful. I'd just like to direct everyone now to the final session of the day, sadly, with Martin, and that is starting now. If you go back to the Moodle platform, you'll see that. Thanks again, Gill.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye.
Bye.